Greetings and God bless. Welcome to another episode of Pass the Mic, Dynamic Voices for a Diverse Church, powered by The Witness, a Black Christian collective. I am your host, Tyler Burns. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Burns Clan. Please follow at your own risk. I felt like a real TV host just then. I felt like I am your host.
You got a legit setup.
Well, and always, as you can hear, joining me is the founder of The Witness, very extensive bio. He is the man, the myth, the legend, the two-time best-selling author, Mr. Blue Check Verified himself, Dr. Jemar Tisby. What's going on, brother?
JemarTisby.substack.com. Be there.
Anyway. I said, what's going on, brother?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Just forgot that part of the intro.
Hey, man, look. I didn't do it last episode either. I trust you. I can't carry all your promo. You got to cut your own promo, bro.
Legendary intro.
Hey, man, y'all got to raise my salary by like 1 cent if you going to give me.
We might can make that happen. But we're back here in the studio at St. Stephen Church. If you cannot see us, you ought to see the setup. Go to patreon.com/pass the mic, become a patron, and you will get access to these videos as well as the audio.
They switch the colors back here, everything.
Oh, yeah.
You can't see it behind you, but they switch the colors.
Okay,
Bro, just switch the colors. It's nice,
this.
bro. It's nice. So shout out to the family here. Listen, man, we got to talk about something. We didn't get a chance to talk about this, but everybody's talking about Coach Prime, bro.
Man, we've been talking about it for weeks, going
Everybody
back and forth.
talking about prime time. Deion Sanders, JSU, HBCUs, Colorado. Now, why he go to Colorado? I'm like, come on, man. You can't go to just
Right.
Colorado.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Deion Sanders, of course, is a legendary NFL player who retired and then got into coaching.
Also legendary baseball player.
Baseball player,
yeah,
dual sport professional. One of these guys who just phenomenally athletically gifted, body and mind, right?
I think the only player, if I'm not mistaken, to play in a Super Bowl, only athlete to play in a Super Bowl and in a World Series.
Unreal.
So Deion, and growing up watching him,
yes,
when he played with the Cowboys and when he played with the Niners, like growing up watching him, I mean, there was nobody like him. He was electric, he was gifted, and he almost had this preternatural gift for the moment.
Yes.
And he knew what to do, when to do it. And what's interesting is both of the players that we're talking about and now coaches that we're talking about, both Deion Sanders and Ed Reed were both like this. They both had this capturing the moment.
Yes.
And if you go back and look at Ed Reed highlights, go back and watch Ed Reed highlights when he played with the Ravens. I'm gonna tell you, some of the most electrifying highlights from a defensive player. It's almost like whenever he would get an interception, it was like he was shot out of a cannon. It was like it was a planned thing because it was he's just so, just so dynamic in the moment, and that's exactly how Prime was. So for those of you who don't know, Prime wanted to get into coaching a few years ago. And in his desire to get into coaching, of course, it's an interesting time to get into coaching, pre-pandemic, things of that nature. He was trying to get on as an assistant coach at, some Power 5 schools, right? The ACC schools, Florida State, which is his alma mater, Miami, places like that. And he couldn't get in the door. So he decides to take a head coaching job at JSU. Now, a couple of things happened before then. I think this is important to note that there was one HBCU, I'm not remembering specifically the one, but one HBCU helped him to finish his education so that he would qualify to be a head coach. So that was also something very important. So the HBCU helped him that's part of his story. And then he comes on at JSU.
And he had coached at high school level as
absolutely, he had coached at high school level, so he was very gifted at that, but trying to break into college coaching, right? And in the pursuit of his dreams, while also trying to coach his sons at the college level, which is very special and exciting, he goes to Jackson State. And so when he goes to Jackson State in the SWAC conference, this is an HBCU, people are excited about it, and all this attention gets drawn to JSU.
Unbelievable.
And you're not even like I don't consider you a big sports guy, but at the same time, I know you saw this.
Oh, yeah. Well, college football is my thing because I went to Notre Dame, go Irish, but also
not
Jackson
in HBCU.
State. Also, Jackson State is part of the story because I took my first graduate course in history at Jackson State, lived in Jackson, Mississippi for 5 years, saw the love and the pride for JSU. Also that it had fallen on hard times, even though as HBCUs goes, ago, it's one of the largest and most well-funded. It still was not anywhere near the level of support and resources or attention that it really deserved. And when Coach Prime came, all eyes on, like you said, the ability to show up in the moment. Like we don't really give Deion Sanders as much credit as he deserves for just being savvy with attention and marketing. And he was able to bring, like, it's one thing that you played in professional sports, right? But to be able to bring all of that access, all of that attention, so many of those resources, to bring it to bear on your new position as head coach at a HBCU was something that felt uniquely suited for Coach Prime.
And I think, there are three elements of this that I found to be very interesting. Number one, his presentation as a coach was completely different, right? So he definitely used the non-denominational black preacher template, like definitely word of faith preacher template.
Wow.
The alliteration, the cadence, all that.
Just like the way he spoke, like
game
black
recognized
preacher.
game. We know what's up. We know what's up. So there was definitely that. But then also there was this tremendous ability to do social media marketing.
There it is. Yes.
And his social media marketing and him capturing that, doing hype videos, and really rallying people around.
And his confidence.
And his confidence,
which
right?
he's
the
always
confidence
had.
And the swagger transferred now to a coaching environment. And then his ability to rally players together and draw attention. And so I didn't have the privilege of going to a HBCU. And so you could tell that there was even energy in that. There was so much energy. There was attention being drawn. And that's a good thing, right?
Well,
that's
a quick story related to that is Notre Dame is not an HBCU in any way, shape, or form. But if there was an HBCU on campus, it was the football team because most of the players were black. And I saw the difference. I was there in these terrible Coach Bob Davie years, but then I was also there for Tyrone Willingham, who was the first black head coach of Notre Dame football. And related to this conversation about Deion Sanders and Jackson State, when Tyrone Willingham came on board and understood the players at a level no head coach could ever do previously, you could literally see the pride on players' faces. They were already big, looked like they got bigger. They walked a little taller, shoulders back, straight. Finally, it felt like they sensed that finally we have somebody at the top who gets us.
Right.
And I can imagine it was a similar effect, different in that they had black head coaches, but finally we have somebody whose very presence reminds people of our dignity.
And then he grabs the number one recruit in the country from his alma mater, and Travis Hunter, and then he's recruiting people. People are transferring. The team's playing extremely well.
Everybody wants to play for Coach Prime. Yes.
Everyone wants to play for him. Seems like a fun atmosphere. And then there were rumors that he was getting head coaching offers or entertaining them. A couple of people had asked him this in journalistic moments in journalism. They'd asked him, hey, so, if you get a Power 5 head coaching offer, he'd be like, well, I have to entertain that.
Yeah.
I'd have to think about it. I have to look at it. And then the news comes out slowly but surely that he's going to be moving to Colorado and probably going to be taking all the best players at JSU with him in the transfer portal. Now, I don't know if he would have necessarily, in fairness, been able to do this in the way that he did, or if he would have done this without the adjustment to the transfer portal rules. Excuse me. So normally what happens is you have to wait a year before you can actually play once you transfer. So you have to redshirt a year afterwards. And in some cases, maybe even longer than a year. With some exceptions, maybe it's shorter, but typically, before a few years ago, it was just, you had to wait a year. But then there were so many cases of coaches that were kind of leaving athletes high and dry that they changed and adjusted it to where if you can play immediately. So it's almost like, free agency, so you can play immediately. You can transfer, you say, okay, well, now I want to see what's at this other college and this other campus. And it's created a lot of turmoil because a lot of the kids are dealing with Okay, now I transferred. I don't have another scholarship somewhere because the transfer portal is over full. But Deion can directly pull from his JSU best talent gifts and directly pull straight to Colorado, which is a struggling program on the West Coast. It's a struggling program. It's not the bastion of football excellence. And now he can not just command a top dollar salary, but offer these former JSU athletes tremendous facilities, opportunities, national attention.
Right.
Well, and so he leaves.
But coaches leave all the time. Like, what's the big deal?
So here's the okay. Is this it? Jemar's like okay, and
like you talk about a very flashy coach moving from one school to another. I mean, transfers and shuffling like this happens all the time. What's so special about Coach Prime in Jackson State?
Here's the deal. In early, I believe it was 2020, when he came on as Jackson State's head coach, he said he could have gone to another school. He could have gone to other places. I don't know if he could have. There's dispute about that. But like, he says, I could have done this, could have done that. But this is the key here. He says, God called me to Jackson State.
Yeah, I remember that.
God told me that I have to go to Jackson State. It is always very interesting and always sometimes a bit precarious when you use the words God told me. Now, I come from a Pentecostal background, of course, as you know. And so the idea of God telling me, hearing that, I've heard that, I've said that. Sometimes different people mean different things, right? 9 times out of 10, people don't mean they heard the audible voice of God. Sometimes they mean their spirit bared witness with something, or they felt led to do something, or they felt convicted to do something, or they felt moved to do something. And then other times it's just because they wanted to do it and then they put God in it.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
So it was a little bit, I think, of people, and I can't speak for, HBCU alumni and professors and people, but I can tell that a lot of people felt like, okay, so you came in here promising change and you delivered on that. But you also promised to materially change the attention for HBCUs.
And that God told you to.
And that God told you to. And that you said it would be, why do we have to go to the big Power 5 schools? Why do we have to go to these flashy schools? Why do we have to go to the ACC schools? Why do we have to go to the Pac-10 schools? Why do we have to do that, right? And he was making the case and the argument, we can do it just as good here.
Right.
But then you leave. And so it brought up the question, and some people use the word sellout. That's not really what I'm bringing up. But it brought up the question of, what is the equity of coming in with big, bold ideas about what you're going to do to change, and then leaving before the change is actually institutionalized?
Right.
We can see the change that's on the surface.
Yeah.
But leaving before it's institutionalized, leaving before it's systemic, leaving before it changes from the foundation. And then now, when you came, the attention was with you. When you left, the attention's still with you.
It's gonna follow you. Yep.
And so now, what does Jackson State do now?
That's right.
What do these schools do now, right? So that's one angle of it that I felt like was a lot of people were talking about that particular angle of it, because you said God told you to.
And he was there for such a short amount of time, 3 years, right? And in that 3 years was incredibly successful and effective. Won the SWAC conference twice, I think. Yep. Had an undefeated regular season this last year. So it wasn't just him being there. It wasn't even just the attention. It was the kind of attention. They were winning. They had College Game Day. ESPN comes and every week chooses one matchup to cover in person. And that hardly ever happens at an HBCU.
Right. Yeah.
And they College Game Day at Jackson State. And with that attention, and especially because it's a football program, dollars come behind it, good, student and alumni pride, all of that stuff. So I think the fact that he was that successful also played into it, right? He wasn't just there. He was there and he was winning, and it felt like it was just beginning.
Well, and okay, so let's give it from Coach Prime's perspective in fairness, right? So he says, you know, in this coaching game, if you don't elevate, you get eliminated or something like that. There was some alliteration they used. So you have to elevate or else, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He also said that the facilities at Jackson State just weren't up to par.
Yeah.
He also said that he was having to pay for stuff, right? He also said that he was having to get a reduced salary based upon the constraints of the school.
Right.
So he's working in conditions, according to him, that aren't conducive to long-term success, winning, transformation, which leads me to our second case study, right, which is Ed Reed. So Ed Reed, who is, once again, University of Miami, one of the greatest safeties ever, both in college and in the NFL, he decides that right after this, right after Prime moves to Colorado, he's going to get in the mix and go to Bethune-Cookman.
Another HBCU.
Another
in
HBCU
Florida.
in Florida, right?
Yep.
I know Bethune graduates, Bethune alumni, all the above. And so he decides he's going to go there. Now, he goes there. Everyone's doing the splash. This is Coach Prime, you know, part 2, 2.0, what have you. And then he comes out on IG Live and blasts me. There's trash in my office. There's trash everywhere. And he's cussing at the camera, everything. And people are like, yo, wait a minute now. And so all of a sudden, HBCU alumni and people are like pushing back on it. And then after a couple of weeks, it comes out that Bethune decides he was actually in the advanced stages of a hiring process. So he didn't officially have a contract yet. And he, which is, you know, don't play yourself.
Mistake here, yes.
Don't play yourself. So he wasn't officially the head coach. And then what comes out, he's removed. They decide not to move forward. And so he gives this impassioned plea on IG Live to his students, to his players. They're crying, they're emotional about it because they saw an opportunity similar to JSU.
Yeah.
He said he was bringing high dollar donors like Shaq and other people that were going to pour money into the school. But he said the conditions were bad. Then players came out and said, they are. We got mildew and mold in our helmets. We got mold in our dorm rooms. We got these are bad conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And so Ed Reed's like, see?
Right.
And Deion's like, see? We can't make it like this.
This is real insider stuff that is hard to understand if you haven't been meaningfully engaged with Black institutions, from churches to
Talk
higher
about
ed.
this. Talk about this.
Y'all, we have done so much with so little. And we've talked about this as The Witness, as a Black nonprofit, right? What we're often called to do is fund and resource our own endeavors. Remember, schools like Jackson State, Bethune Cookman, some of those were land grant institutions after the Civil War,
Yes.
many of them privately funded, right? So we've been called upon to resource our own institutions out of our poverty, not out of this abundance of wealth we had after centuries of enslavement. And then when we have to compete then against all this wealth that has been hoarded,
Yeah.
right? So of course there's the older universities with direct ties to race-based chattel slavery, but there's a whole slew of other predominantly white institutions that have benefited from advantages in society, whether through law or custom, right? So anyway, they have all this money. And compared to Black institutions, we were broke as a joke and trying to do as much and better
As
with
much
little.
With far less.
Far less.
So were they right?
Yeah,
Was
listen,
Deion right? Was Ed Reed right?
the conditions are less than ideal because they've been perennially under-resourced. Okay. But I'll also say, and this might be controversial even to some pro-Black folks, is one of the poverties of resources isn't just financial or material, it's experiential. So in the sense of, if you have an institution and the personnel there, none of them have been trained, none of them have seen something different, none of them have worked in a different environment that maybe functions differently, then you also don't have that within institutional knowledge. So here's the balancing act that we have as folks who love Black people and Black institutions, is to recognize the obstacles and the challenges that we face, especially in terms of resources, but still call for the highest standard possible and still pursue excellence even in the face of those obstacles.
Okay, we got to unpack this because there's a lot there. So let's take a break. We're going to come back, and I want you to talk a little bit more about this because I feel like you're touching on something a lot of people will resonate with. We'll be right back here on Pass the Mic. Hey everybody, thank you for listening to this episode of Pass the Mic, and we want to tell you a little bit about how you can support not just liking, subscribing, reviewing, but also our Patreon audience as well.
Absolutely. We are a listener-supported podcast, so thank you so much to our current patrons, and we want to invite you and give you the opportunity, if you're not already a patron, to go ahead and go to patreon.com/passthemic. You can pay as little as $1 an episode, and your support helps make this podcast possible.
Bo Coders, $1. Support us. Patreon.com/passthemic.
So there's a whole lot of layers to this with Deion Sanders in Jackson State, Ed Reed and Bethune Cookman. What I was saying is this tension between dealing with the reality that you've got and then always aspiring to an even higher standard. That's one of the difficult parts. Like, for instance, in my classes, we have students who are mostly coming from the local area. Not all of them what you would say is college ready, not because they lack any ability, but because they've come from school environments that face some of the same challenges as HBCUs, right? In terms of under-resourcing, lack of the personnel, et cetera, et cetera. So it's this tension between meeting folks where they are and with the tools and resources they've got, and also recognizing we want you to be able to achieve at the highest levels, which is going to take a standard. So I think for both Deion Sanders and Ed Reed, they're calling their institutions to a higher standard, but with Ed Reed, so much of it wasn't whether what he was saying was accurate. Players are saying it was in many instances. It was how he did it.
Right.
And there's a certain way you have to come into and respect Black institutions, and particularly the people involved.
Yes.
So can you imagine what it felt like to be staff, administrator, faculty at Bethune Cookman, and here's this high wattage coach getting on social media live and saying,
blasting your institution,
just blasting the institution,
putting your business out on Front Street.
I'm saying. So a lot of people was like, well, it's not that what he said was wrong. It was like, this is an insider conversation. There's a million ways you could have done that without putting the whole school on blast for anybody who can log in.
I remember when our church did it was during the pandemic, we did a series on family dynamics, or we did a series on basically going back to go forward, kind of a Sankofa principle. And one of the sermons was on family dynamics, like going back to your family, and where God tells Jacob basically to go back and have this encounter with Esau, right? And go back to that place, right? And it's like, I kind of don't want to do that,
I want to move on.
And so we had this, I had this virtual conversation with Dr. Christina Edmondson, and she talked about how oftentimes we leave our homes, right? And then when we're gone for a while, our noses become numb to the smells of what we have experienced while we're in that environment. When we leave for a while and come back, we smell things we didn't smell before, right? We see things we didn't see before because we've seen more of the world. And she said it's very important to be careful. Just because you can smell certain things, and just because you can see certain things that other people even within the house can't, you have to be careful about how you address what you smell and what you see. And it was such wisdom in terms of the inner human family dynamics, but I think it's also wisdom in terms of our community as well.
Absolutely.
That when we come back, look, it's not like this, it's not like, and especially those of us who have experienced extended time in predominantly white churches or organizations,
Yes.
for us to come back into Black-led institutions and not to hold standard, because excellence and standard is crucial and important, but to come back in and expect something. You know, I've experienced this as someone who is relaunching, planting a church, right? That certain people come in with expectation that things will be done already.
Right.
And we're relaunching. So I know we had a church before, but it's like we're starting from ground zero.
Yeah.
You know, we're having to build up, and it takes time to build up these structures within the institution.
That's right.
It takes time to build up these systems within the organization. It takes time. We're building, we're growing, we're new. And people come in, want you to be ready.
Yeah. Want you to be like the other church that they had experienced.
And want you to be at the standard that they believe is the best standard without knowing the resources you have or don't. And one of the things that I struggle with in both of these cases is, if you sign up to be a part of a Black-led organization, institution, church, you have to count the cost of what you are signing up for.
There you go.
And what I mean by that isn't so much that you accept whatever and it's fine, it doesn't matter, you give them a pass, an excuse. But what I mean is, especially from people who are, especially from those of us who are rich and famous.
Uh-huh.
I am not rich and famous, so I don't have this. I say those of us like I'm one of them. I'm not. But for my heart hurt because Deion and Ed Reed are some of the greatest athletes to ever walk the face of the earth. Some of the greatest athletes to ever pick up a football. And they have experienced great success, great wealth, great achievement, great accolades. And when you enter into a space with the idea that God told you to come back or God has put you on this mission, you have to count the cost. And you have to say, change will always look harder for the people who haven't experienced what I have.
Yes. Say that
And for the
again.
people who haven't seen what I've seen, and the people who haven't been where I've been, and the people who haven't had, in some cases you have to understand that it wasn't just talent and gift, it's also the grace and providence of God that causes the ball to bounce in your direction in ways that maybe it wouldn't have for others, but the talent may have been the same for them. I'm not saying it was, these are one of a kind, you know, generational gifts. But I'm just saying, you also have the humility to understand, no, God blessed me with these opportunities. And I was in the right place at the right time with the right people. It was providential. It was not all me. And so you enter into institutions with humility.
There it is.
You enter into situations with humility that says, yeah, I'm going to be brash and confident and bold, but behind the scenes, I'm going to really try to work to change the foundations of the institution, to change the foundations of the situation. And that takes much longer, harder work.
Yeah.
But I think that's the work that God has called a lot of us to in a way that is uncomfortable. And it also means we might not look as successful to other people, or we might not be as successful to other people in comparison to what we could. You could have done this, you could have done that. And I think it's tough. I think, you know, anybody that makes a material move to better and improve their financial situation, to better provide for their family, to be in an environment where they can pay their bills, where they don't have to live under stress, especially if you're black and you're a black man, you're a black woman. I completely understand that. I support that. Do that, right? As long as it's not like doing something that's shameful or demeaning or illegal, like go for it. Like, I get it, right? But for those who have wealth, and for those who have privilege, and for those who have, what does it look like to sacrifice opportunity for the long game? And playing the long game sometimes is, I sacrifice what could be a status boost here in order to get down with the people and do the slow work of change and adjustment. And I'm not just going to take the cream of the crop, but I'm going to get down in it with the people who may be opposing me, because this is the reality. We don't know. Jackson State, Bethune, they may have been opposing them. They may have made their lives much, much harder, much, much more difficult. 100%, I acknowledge it. But sometimes if you sacrifice that bigger opportunity, that the more rewarding work is to get down and change the institution from the inside out.
That's right.
And that's it's a beautiful, mysterious work that God breathes on in ways that people don't understand. God breathes on faithfulness. God breathes on it. God does something unique to the faithful.
Wow.
God does something unique for the faithful. And I think sometimes we really are convinced that if I separate myself and I get in a different space, and it's going to work here, it's going to work there, and the kingdom doesn't work like that type of human math.
Yeah.
The kingdom, God uses what? The foolish things of the world.
Shame the wise.
To confound those who are wise. God uses the weak things of the world to subvert the ones who are mighty. Well, if I have more, maybe God will breathe on your less. Maybe. I don't know.
All right, preacher.
Hey, man, I'm just,
God will
maybe.
breathe on your less.
But maybe he will if you're found faithful in doing what he's called you to do. And so my heart hurts because sometimes I think we send messages to people that, it's got to be more, it's got to be. And maybe it doesn't have to be. Some cases, I think God does do some unique, mysterious things. Sometimes there are opportunities, you take them. I'm not saying don't take the opportunity. But then sometimes, God calls you to Simmons. Jemar, you could be anywhere. Oh, you could go here, you could go there. But no, like, I'm gonna be with my people.
Yeah. I think when you say counting the cost, that's very, very real. We're of a generation that was born into desegregation, not authentic integration, but desegregation, in that different opportunities open and available to us that weren't to our parents' generation, and certainly not our grandparents' generation. And so we can enter those spaces. I can go to a place like the University of Notre Dame. I can go to different places that are predominantly white, and that not being unrelated to the fact that they're well-resourced.
Right.
And I can see what it's like there. And honestly, with more resources, with more institutional knowledge, you can do things at a higher level and a higher degree, right? And that's not wrong or bad in and of itself. But when you said the thing about humility, to know that not everybody's seen what you've seen. And the other thing is, and I have to really remind myself of this because I've been blessed to be in a lot of incredible spaces, is to realize the journey that people have been on.
Oof.
So where you're entering into, you don't know what it was like before.
Yeah.
So they may have grown by leaps and bounds, which to the people involved in dirt under their fingernails working for change, it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You don't know what we've been through to get to where we are now. And no, we're not where we want to be, but the last thing we need is somebody coming in here and disrespecting the work, the labor, the effort that we've already put in.
Done. Yeah.
So I think what was so really troublesome, really difficult for folks like me and others with Deion's departure is it felt like an effort interrupted. So after just 3 years, he had instigated so much. It was just a complete sort of turnaround and shift for the football team in that department, which, as you said, could have been institutionalized to some degree, could have come to characterize the entire university, but we'll never know.
Yeah.
Because he up and left. And I think that was what was so hard for people. And it gets back to the dignity thing.
Right.
Folks at Jackson State and in the city of Jackson, alumni and supporters recognize the value of this institution.
Yeah.
But what is so frustrating and part of counting the cost of working at a black institution is to be constantly overlooked and underappreciated.
Yes.
Doing what you're doing it to the high degree, the best you can with what you've been given. And nobody recognizes, all the attention goes to the Power 5 school. All the attention goes to the well-funded school. And meanwhile, you're doing more with less. and not getting anywhere close to the kind of recognition. Then somebody comes along, shines a spotlight on, doesn't make you great, shines a spotlight on how great you already are. And then that spotlight shifts again.
Yeah.
Follows that person. There is much more that is happening when you invest in Black institutions than bringing material resources.
Right.
You're investing in the dignity of the people there. And so that means there's much more involved when you leave. And I say that as somebody who's at an HBCU, has no idea what the future will hold.
Yeah, absolutely.
But just trying to at least honor the capaciousness, the expansiveness of what it means to be involved in a Black institution.
And this is what I'll say in closing, Jay. I think I'm at this stage of my life where I'm charting out what my life will look like. You know, what will my life look like and what will it be in the future? I think I'm at this stage of life where I don't want to take an opportunity. I want to bring people with me to an opportunity. And I don't just want to walk into a door. I want to walk into the door and hold it open.
Yeah.
And I want to walk hand in hand. I want them to have to refashion the door because there's so many of us coming. Right? Like, I feel like there's this level of, it's not just about me, it's about more than me. And I've always felt that way, but I think more so in this, you know, kind of transitioning into what is life going to look like moving forward. Yeah. I want to create space for more. And I want to be the catalyst for creating space for more, not just for me. And part of the challenge of being, you know, young and Black, and you know, for some of us young, gifted, and Black, is we have opportunities. And opportunities are seductive. They are seductive, but they're also seductive gods to worship.
Ooh.
And I think the greater call of the kingdom is, my community comes with me. And so this is the idea of, you know, Deion goes to Pac-12. Look at it, we won. You know, what I see it all on Facebook. What game we going to? What game we going to? Where we going? When we going to get some Colorado gear? You know, going good and well, you ain't never been to Colorado. But anyway, we going to get this Colorado gear.
You don't even
and all
know
this.
they colors.
I get it. I understand. Support your people. I'm not saying that. But what would it have looked like if in 10 years, Deion's able to say, oh no, Jackson State is now part of one of these bigger conferences because the program's so big, it outgrew where it was. And so now the program comes with.
Right.
So I don't just go, the program comes, my people come with me. And I think some of us have to admit that, you know, maybe we've short-circuited a call. Maybe the call.
Come on, man.
Maybe the call was actually for us to Moses carried the weight of leading the people. There's so many people, they got so many problems, everything. I'm gonna help you with structure. I'm help you. But if Moses has said, I don't want to deal with everybody. Let me just take a couple of y'all and then we'll take you. But no, you were the nation. It's the nation. You take them to show them something they've never seen before. And frankly, they might grab you and pull you back and make you feel so overwhelmed that you might not see it yourself. But because you were faithful,
gotta breathe on it.
People behind you will see what they wouldn't have been able to see if you weren't faithful. If you didn't do what you were supposed to do, your grandkids won't see it. They won't be able to witness and live in it and touch it and see God's greatness in it. And maybe that's the issue. Maybe we just want it for us.
Ooh.
And I'm just at this place of, I don't despise those who want it for them. I don't despise that. I don't. Like I used to, and I've hopefully grown past that because that's immature, right? We celebrate wins. We celebrate victories no matter where they come from. Praise God. But I want more than that. I don't want it for me. I want it for us.
I feel like this is going to be a theme this is going to pop up in our conversations.
I think so too. I think this is my 2023 mood. I don't know, man. But so that's what hurt my heart, man. And you know, best of luck to Deion, his sons, Ed Reed, everybody. I mean, we need more examples. But I do feel like I want more than just them. The call got to be bigger than a person. What if the call is for a people? All right, I'm done. y'all be cool. Y'all be